Title: The Forest of Oblivion and the Sacred Spring. In the heart of an ancient land, hidden beneath the veil of mist, lies a forest unlike any other. It is called the Forest of Oblivion. No one truly remembers when it first appeared, and no one remembers the stories of those who ventured into its depths. The trees here are tall and towering, their trunks twisted in ways that seem unnatural. Their branches stretch upward, creating a dense canopy that blocks the sun, casting the forest in a perpetual twilight. The air smells of earth and forgotten dreams, and the sounds of the forest are soft, like whispers of a time long past. Among the many travelers who have ventured into this forest, few have returned, and those who did were forever changed. Their eyes spoke of visions too strange to comprehend, and their voices carried the weight of memories that were not their own. It is said that the forest has a way of drawing people in, erasing their past, and offering them something far more precious than what they left behind: a chance to find the sacred spring. The sacred spring lies at the very heart of the Forest of Oblivion. It is a place of immense power, a place where the waters flow with the wisdom of the ages. The spring is said to hold the answers to life's deepest mysteries, offering peace to those who drink from its waters. But the journey to the spring is not an easy one. It requires a heart that is pure, a mind that is open, and a soul that is willing to let go of the burdens of the past. One such traveler was a young woman named Alara. She had heard the legends of the sacred spring and the Forest of Oblivion for as long as she could remember. Her grandmother had told her the stories when she was just a child, and they had filled her dreams with wonder and awe. But now, as an adult, Alara had come to realize that the world she lived in was not as kind as the stories had made it seem. The world was filled with pain, loss, and uncertainty. She had lost everything dear to her: her family, her home, and her peace of mind. And so, she set out on a journey to find the sacred spring, hoping that it might offer her the solace she so desperately needed. As Alara entered the Forest of Oblivion, the air grew thick with the scent of moss and damp earth. She felt a strange sensation wash over her, as if the forest was pulling her in, beckoning her to move deeper into its embrace. The trees whispered in a language she could not understand, their leaves rustling like a chorus of voices, each one carrying a secret, a memory, a forgotten wish. The deeper she traveled into the forest, the more she began to lose track of time. Days passed without her realizing it, and the path before her seemed to change with each step. She had no idea if she was moving in the right direction, but something within her kept her going. She could feel the pull of the sacred spring, faint but undeniable, like a distant song calling her name. One evening, as the sun sank low beneath the horizon, Alara came upon a clearing. In the center of the clearing stood a large stone well, its surface covered in moss and ivy. The air around it was still, as if the very earth itself was holding its breath. Alara approached the well cautiously, her heart pounding in her chest. She could feel the presence of something ancient and powerful, something that had been waiting for her. She knelt beside the well and peered into its depths. To her surprise, the water was clear and still, reflecting the sky above like a mirror. But as she gazed into the water, she saw something more: a vision of herself, standing in the clearing, but with a look in her eyes that she did not recognize. She saw herself as a child, laughing with her family. She saw the day she lost everything, the day her world crumbled. She saw the pain in her heart, the anger, the sorrow, and the fear that had followed her through the years. And then, she saw something else. A figure, cloaked in light, standing at the edge of the clearing. The figure reached out a hand to her, and she knew that this was no ordinary vision. This was the presence of the sacred spring, offering her a chance to let go of the past and find the peace she had longed for. The figure spoke to her, its voice soft and soothing. "Alara," it said. You have come far, and you have faced many trials. But now, you must face the greatest trial of all, the trial of the heart. Will you let go of the pain that has burdened you for so long? Will you allow yourself to heal? Alara felt a wave of emotion wash over her, and for the first time in many years, she felt the weight in her chest begin to lift. She nodded slowly, tears welling in her eyes. "I am ready," she whispered. "I am ready to let go." The figure extended its hand further, and Alara took it. As their fingers touched, a warmth spread through her, filling her with light and peace. The vision in the water changed, showing her a future full of hope and possibility. The pain of the past faded, and in its place grew a sense of clarity and calm. Alara stood, her heart now light and free. She turned to the sacred spring, and in that moment, she understood that the spring was not just a place of healing, it was a symbol of the power within herself. The power to heal, to forgive, and to move forward. She knelt beside the spring and dipped her fingers into the cool water. As she did, she felt a rush of energy flow through her, a sense of renewal and purpose. She drank from the spring, and with each sip, she felt the peace she had longed for settled deep within her soul. And so, Alara left the forest of oblivion, no longer weighed down by the past. The journey had been difficult, but it had brought her to a place of understanding, a place where she could finally heal. She returned to the world, not as the person who had entered the forest, but as someone renewed, someone who had discovered the power of letting go. The forest of oblivion remained, its secrets hidden within the shadows, its whispers carried on the wind. But for Alara, the journey had ended. The sacred spring had given her what she needed, a chance to find peace and to embrace the future. And in the quiet of the night, when the world is still and the stars shine brightly above, the whispers of the forest can still be heard, telling the stories of those who came before, and those who will come after, seeking the same peace that Alara found in the heart of the forest of oblivion. As Alara continued her journey back from the forest of oblivion, she felt as if the weight of the world had been lifted from her shoulders. The air around her was now filled with a new sense of lightness. Her heart, once heavy with sorrow, now beat with a quiet, unshakable peace. The forest, though still cloaked in mystery, no longer seemed like a place of darkness and loss. Instead, it had become a place of wisdom and healing, a place that had guided her towards something far more precious than anything she had ever sought. The path that led her out of the forest was lined with delicate flowers, their petals glowing faintly in the twilight. She marveled at the beauty of the scene, knowing that it was the result of her own inner transformation. The forest had not only shown her the way to the sacred spring, but it had also helped her unlock the hidden strength within herself. She traveled for many days, her heart filled with gratitude and awe, until she reached the edge of the forest. As she stood at the boundary, looking back at the ancient trees that had given her so much, she realized that she had come full circle. The forest had been both a place of loss and a place of rebirth. It had taken her to the depths of her pain and then guided her to the surface, where she could breathe again. But as Alara stepped beyond the forest's borders, she knew that her journey was not yet over. The sacred spring had given her peace, but the world beyond held new challenges, new lessons. The spring had not promised that life would be without struggle, it had only promised that, with the right heart and mind, she could face those struggles with grace. Alara walked onward, her steps light but purposeful, knowing that she was no longer bound by the chains of her past. Each day, the memories of the pain she had endured grew fainter, like whispers in the wind. What remained was the quiet strength that came from accepting her own journey, from understanding that healing was not an end but a process, one that required patience, forgiveness, and the willingness to embrace what lay ahead. She crossed rivers, climbed mountains, and walked through fields that stretched out like endless tapestries of green. Everywhere she went, she encountered people who shared their stories of sorrow and joy, each one a reflection of the human experience. Alara listened with compassion, for she knew the power of a kind ear and a gentle heart. The lessons she had learned in the forest of oblivion guided her as she shared her own journey with those she met, offering them hope and understanding. One evening, as the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the horizon, Alara found herself on a quiet hill overlooking a small village. She had been traveling for many weeks, but the peace she had found within herself still burned brightly. It was as if the light from the sacred spring had continued to illuminate her path, showing her where she needed to go. At that moment, she realized that the sacred spring had not only healed her, it had also given her a new purpose. It had shown her that healing was not just about finding peace within oneself, but also about sharing that peace with others. She could offer the wisdom of her journey to those who had not yet found their own path to healing. Alara smiled softly to herself, feeling the wind gently brush against her face. The world was vast and full of possibility, but she no longer felt lost. She had found her way, and with each step forward, she felt more at home in the world. She was ready to face whatever came next, knowing that the lessons of the sacred spring would always be with her quiet. Like the whispers of the forest, but powerful in their stillness. And so, her journey continued. As Alara ventured farther from the forest of oblivion, the days seemed to blend together, each one carrying a sense of quiet peace she had never known before. The rhythm of her breath matched the soft murmur of nature surrounding her, as if the world itself was in harmony with her renewed spirit. Yet, she knew her journey was not over. The path ahead, though full of unknowns, felt guided by the quiet wisdom of the sacred spring. She arrived in a small village nestled at the foot of a mountain range, its houses tucked between tall, ancient trees. The villagers greeted her with cautious smiles, their faces worn from the trials of life. Yet there was something about them that resonated with Hera's shared longing for peace and healing. Alara spent many days wandering the village, learning of the people and their struggles. There were tales of sickness that had lingered for years, of hearts broken by loss, and of minds clouded with fear. It was clear to her that this village, like so many others, was in need of the same peace she had found in the forest of oblivion. One evening, as Alara sat by the fire, an elderly woman approached her, her steps slow but deliberate. Her name was Muriel, and she was known as the village's healer. But even Muriel's wise hands had been unable to ease the deep pain that seemed to haunt the village. The woman looked at Alara with sharp eyes, as if she saw something in her that others could not. "You have come from the forest, haven't you?" Muriel asked, her voice soft but full of knowing. Alara nodded. "I have," she said quietly. "I have seen its power to heal. It is a place of great mystery, where pain and memory are woven together. But it is also a place of release, where one can find the strength to move forward." Muriel smiled faintly, a glimmer of understanding in her eyes. "Then you know what I seek," she said. "The people here, they are lost in their own memories, trapped in a cycle of pain and suffering. I have tried all that I know to help them, but the healing is not complete." Alara felt a stir in her chest, a call to action. The sacred spring had given her the peace she had needed. And it had shown her that healing was not just about finding inner peace, it was about helping others on their own journey. "Perhaps," Alara said gently, "there is more to healing than medicine. There is power in letting go, in embracing the present, and in forgiving both others and ourselves." Muriel studied Alara for a moment before nodding. "You are right. There is a healing that lies beyond the body, a kind of healing that touches the soul." Together, Alara and Muriel began working with the villagers. They gathered them in the quiet of the evening, under the light of the stars, and shared the story of the forest of oblivion. Alara spoke of the sacred spring and how it had guided her to find peace, teaching the villagers the power of releasing old wounds and embracing the present moment. Each evening, as the villagers gathered around the fire, Alara would lead them in gentle meditation, encouraging them to breathe deeply, to let go of the memories that weighed them down, and to forgive the past. Muriel helped with her healing herbs and salves, but it was Alara's words, her quiet presence, that seemed to awaken something in the villagers, a deep, forgotten connection to their own hearts. As the days passed, Alara noticed subtle changes in the villagers. Their eyes began to hold a glimmer of hope, their voices grew steadier, and their steps seemed lighter. The air in the village felt softer, as if a veil of sorrow was being lifted. Even the old trees that lined the village seemed to whisper encouragement, their leaves rustling like a melody of new beginnings. One day, a young man came to Alara, his face drawn with concern. His name was Kieran, and he had been one of the most reluctant to embrace the healing. His heart was still heavy with grief over the loss of his family, and he could not bring himself to let go of the pain that had been his constant companion for so long. Alara sat with Kieran by the edge of the river, the sound of the water flowing over stones soothing in its rhythmic pace. "Tell me, Kieran," Alara said softly, "what weighs on your heart?" Kieran looked out at the river, his gaze distant. "I lost my parents to a sickness many years ago," he said, his voice thick with sorrow. "I have carried their memory ever since. I don't know how to live without them." Alara nodded, understanding. "You do not have to live without them," she said gently. "They are part of you, and they always will be. But holding on to their absence, their pain, that is what keeps you from living fully. To truly honor them, you must live with an open heart, free from the grief that holds you captive." Kieran looked at her, his eyes filled with uncertainty. "But how? How do I let go?" Alara reached out and placed a hand on his. "The first step is to forgive yourself for holding on for so long. Grief has its own time, but there comes a moment when we must choose to step forward. The love you had for them is still within you. Let that love guide you, not the pain." Kieran sat in silence, the words settling deep within him. As the sun began to set, casting a soft orange light over the river, something shifted within him. The weight in his chest seemed to lighten, and for the first time in many years, he allowed himself to remember his parents with love, not sorrow. Days turned into weeks, and Alara's influence continued to spread throughout the village. She had shown them that true healing was not a destination, but a journey, one that required patience, understanding, and above all, love. The villagers, once burdened by their pasts, began to embrace the present with a renewed sense of hope and joy. And so, Alara's role as a healer grew. The lessons she had learned in the forest of oblivion were no longer just memories, they were a part of her, woven into the very fabric of her being. And as she helped others find their own paths to peace, she realized that her journey had come full circle. The sacred spring had been the beginning, but the healing she now offered was a gift she could share with the world. Years passed in the village, and Alara's influence had woven itself into the very heart of the land. The once heavy air had lifted, replaced by a calm serenity that spread through every home, every field, and every heart. But even in this peaceful place, Alara knew that the work of healing was never truly complete. She had helped the villagers find peace, but she could feel that her own heart still held a quiet longing. Something was missing, something she had not yet discovered. One evening, while walking alone along the riverbank, Alara noticed something that stopped her in her tracks, a small, silver shimmer on the horizon, faint but unmistakable. Her heart skipped a beat as she realized what it was. It was the same light that had surrounded the sacred spring, the same light she had seen in the forest of oblivion. Her spirit stirred, and without a second thought, she began walking toward it. The path was familiar yet strange, as if the world was guiding her once again towards something greater. She passed through the village and beyond the fields she had come to know so well, reaching the forest's edge as dusk began to settle in. The forest seemed different now. The trees, which had once appeared so shadowed and mysterious, now felt warm and welcoming, like old friends. The air was thick with the scent of earth and pine, the very ground beneath her feet humming with energy. Alara felt a presence within the forest, a presence that seemed to beckon her forward. The shimmer grew brighter as she ventured deeper into the heart of the forest. Her steps were sure now, her mind at peace, as if the forest had always been part of her soul's journey. She had walked these woods before, but now, the path seemed to lead her to something new, something that had eluded her all these years. Finally, she reached a clearing she had never seen before. In the center of the clearing stood a stone basin, its surface smooth and ancient, with water as clear as glass. A soft, silver light glowed from within the basin, and Alara knew instinctively that this was no ordinary spring. It was the eternal spring, the source of all healing, the wellspring of life itself. The air around the spring hummed with power, and as Alara approached, she felt an overwhelming sense of peace flood through her. She knelt by the water, dipping her fingers into its cool depths. The water was unlike anything she had ever felt before. It was not just water, it was the essence of the universe, the energy of creation itself. Suddenly, the stillness of the moment was broken by a soft, melodic voice. "You have come, Alara." Alara looked up to see a figure emerging from the mist that hung around the spring, a figure cloaked in shimmering light, its face hidden in shadow. The figure's presence was both soothing and powerful, and Alara felt an immediate recognition, as if she had known this being all her life. "Who are you?" she asked softly, her voice barely a whisper. "I am the guardian of the eternal spring," the figure replied, its voice like a melody carried on the wind. "I have watched over this spring for centuries, waiting for the one who would come to understand its true power. And now, you have arrived." Alara's heart quickened as she realized the significance of the moment. The sacred spring. "It was you who guided me?" "Yes," the guardian said, its form beginning to take shape before Alara's eyes. "The sacred spring was but the first step, a gift to help you heal. But the eternal spring, the heart of all healing, has a deeper truth to reveal. It is not just a place of rest, but a place of transformation. It is where the journey truly begins." Alara's mind raced as she absorbed the guardian's words. "Transformation? What do you mean?" "The healing you have given to others, the peace you have brought to this village, is only the beginning," the guardian said. "True healing requires not just the release of pain, but the understanding of all that is light and dark, joy and sorrow, life and death. It requires the willingness to embrace the fullness of existence, to become one with the flow of life itself." Alara's gaze turned back to the shimmering water in the basin, and she felt a deep stirring within her, a call to something greater. "How can I embrace all that is?" she asked, her voice trembling with both fear and excitement. The guardian's form radiated warmth and wisdom. "By accepting the eternal dance of life and death, by understanding that healing is not about fixing what is broken, but about becoming whole. You have done much already, but now you must allow the eternal spring to flow through you, to help you understand the deeper mysteries of the world." The guardian extended its hand, and the water in the basin began to ripple. "Drink from the water, Alara. Let it reveal to you the truth of your soul." Alara hesitated for a moment, the weight of the decision heavy in her chest. But she knew that this was the moment she had been waiting for, the moment that would change everything. With a deep breath, she leaned forward and cupped the cool, clear water in her hands, bringing it to her lips. As she drank, the world around her seemed to dissolve. The air thickened with energy, and she felt as if she were both part of the earth beneath her and the stars above her. The water filled her with a profound sense of interconnectedness. As if all the beings in the universe, living and non-living, past and future, were all woven together in a single, infinite tapestry. Her own consciousness expanded, and she understood, for the first time, the true meaning of healing. Healing was not just about fixing broken things, it was about understanding the beauty in imperfection, the strength in vulnerability, and the peace that comes from embracing the flow of life, with all its trials and joys. As the water's power coursed through her, Alara felt a deep sense of fulfillment, a completion of her journey. The eternal spring had opened her eyes to the truth. Healing was not something that could be contained in a single moment, a single place. It was an eternal process, a constant flow of growth and understanding. The guardian smiled, its form glowing brighter. You are ready now, Alara. You are one with the flow of life. Go forth, and continue your journey. With a final, grateful glance at the eternal spring, Alara turned and walked away, the knowledge she had gained now woven into her being. Her journey was far from over, but she no longer walked it alone. She was at one with the world, and with each step she took, she carried the eternal flow of healing within her. Though Alara's work had reached the far corners of the village and its surrounding lands, there was still a sense of something lingering in unspoken truth that she had yet to fully grasp. The lessons she had learned from the eternal spring had transformed her, but the world was vast, and the healing it needed was even greater. It was during a quiet morning, as the sun broke through the mist in golden beams, that Alara sensed a pull deep within her heart. It was the same feeling she had experienced all those years ago when she first set foot in the forest of oblivion. There was another call, another journey waiting for her. And this time, it was not a physical journey, but one of the spirit. Alara had always been connected to the world around her, its rivers, its trees, the winds that whispered in the branches. But now, she felt as if the earth itself was calling to her, as if the very heart of nature sought her presence. She knew that her path was not just about helping others heal, but about understanding the very fabric of life itself, the force that connected all things. Without hesitation, Alara gathered a small bag of provisions and set out once more, leaving behind the village that had become her home. As she walked through the forest, her feet light and steady, the air around her seemed to shift. The trees seemed to part just for her, and the wind began to whisper softly, as though it had a message for her alone. The further Alara walked, the deeper she felt herself drawn into the heart of the land. She passed through fields that stretched out like a sea of green, and along rivers that sparkled in the light of the rising sun. The journey felt familiar, yet it was as if she were seeing the world for the first time, through eyes that had been opened to its deeper truths. After several days of travel, Alara found herself standing before a vast mountain range, its peaks hidden in the clouds. She had been here before, but this time the mountains felt different. They pulsed with an ancient energy, a power she could not yet comprehend. The wind, now more than just a breeze, seemed to guide her toward a narrow pass between two towering cliffs. Without hesitation, Alara entered the pass, her heart steady and sure. The path grew steeper as she ascended, but the mountain seemed to hold her in its embrace, offering both challenge and support. As she climbed higher, the air grew thinner, the temperature colder. Yet, in the distance, she saw a flicker of light, a light that shimmered like the glow of the sacred spring, far away at the summit. With renewed determination, Alara pressed on, climbing until the world below her became a blur of green and gold. When she finally reached the summit, she found herself standing before a crystal-clear pool of water, its surface as smooth as glass. The light that emanated from it was soft yet brilliant, filling the air with a sense of profound peace. The mountain's peak was bathed in the light of the pool, but the true wonder lay not in the beauty of the water, but in the presence that hovered above it. An ethereal figure, draped in robes of flowing light, stood at the edge of the pool. Its face was serene, its eyes filled with ancient wisdom. "You have arrived, Alara," the figure said, its voice echoing in the stillness of the mountain. "I have been waiting for you." Alara's heart leapt in recognition. She knew this figure, this presence was connected to the eternal spring. She had come full circle, and yet, there was more to learn. "I feel as though I have been walking this path my entire life," Alara said, her voice steady but filled with awe. "But what is it that I must learn now?" The figure smiled, its expression warm and knowing. "You have come to understand healing in many forms. You have learned of the sacred spring, of the eternal spring, and of the dance of life and death. But there is one truth left for you to grasp, one truth that will help you complete your journey." The figure gestured to the pool of water, and as Alara gazed into its depths, she saw images flashing before her, scenes of nature in all its forms, of life blossoming and fading, of hearts breaking and mending. She saw herself, standing in the center of it all, surrounded by the ebb and flow of creation. "The truth," the figure continued, "is that healing is not a solitary act. It is a force that connects all life, every living being, every element of nature, and every spirit. To heal the world, you must embrace your role as a part of the whole. The healing you seek is not just for individuals, but for the world itself. You must become a part of the eternal cycle, both giving and receiving in harmony with the world around you." Alara's heart swelled with understanding, the weight of the figure's words settling within her. She had always known that her work was about helping others, but now, she realized that the healing she had been seeking was not just a gift for the people she encountered, it was a gift to the entire world, a contribution to the balance and harmony of all existence. "You must become the conduit through which the healing flows," the figure said softly. "Embrace the earth, the sky, and the waters, and know that you are not separate from them. You are one with all things, and through this oneness, you will heal, and the world will heal with you." Alara stood in silence, absorbing the truth that now filled her heart. She had learned to heal, to guide others to peace, but now, she understood that healing was not just an action. It was a way of being, a way of living in harmony with all things. With a final nod of understanding, Alara turned and made her way back down the mountain, her spirit filled with newfound purpose. The journey was not over, but she now walked with the full awareness of her place in the great cycle of life. Wherever she went, she would carry the healing of the world within her, and in turn, the world would heal through her. As the seasons passed, Alara's teachings took root far and wide. She was no longer just a healer, she was a guide, a beacon of light that illuminated the path of understanding for all who sought it. The lands she had once traveled through, from the tranquil village to the sacred forests, began to transform in ways that were subtle but profound. The crops grew more vibrant, the air clearer, and the people, old and young alike, seemed to live with a deeper sense of connection. Yet, despite all the beauty and peace that flourished, Alara could not escape the quiet hum of something stirring deep within the earth. It was not a fear, nor a sadness, but a sense of something unfinished, something that needed her attention. She had healed many hearts, mended broken spirits, and helped restore balance. But now the very land itself was calling her back to the roots of all life, back to the source of it all. One evening, as twilight fell over the village, Alara stood at the edge of the forest. The cool night air brushed against her skin, carrying with it the scent of earth and pine. The wind seemed to whisper her name, and in its murmurs, she heard the voices of the world, voices of ancient wisdom and untold stories. It was then that she felt the call more strongly than ever. The earth was beckoning her to return to the heart of the forest of oblivion, to the place where her journey had begun. And so, with a heart full of both peace and resolve, Alara set out once again. As she walked beneath the canopy of trees, the forest greeted her like an old friend, its branches swaying gently in the wind. She had come here so many times before, but this time was different. The forest was alive with energy, as if it had been waiting for her return, and Alara could feel it deep within her bones. She ventured deeper, her footsteps light but purposeful. Her path was not clear, yet she felt guided, as though the very earth itself was shaping her way. And then, after hours of walking, she arrived at the heart of the forest, the sacred grove she had once visited, where the sacred spring lay hidden. But this time, the sacred spring was different. It glowed with an ethereal light that pulsed in rhythm with Alara's heartbeat. The air around it hummed, filled with a deep, ancient energy that she had not felt before. The water of the spring was clear, as it always had been, but now, it seemed to hold within it the secrets of the universe. Reflecting not just the stars above, but the essence of life itself. Alara knelt by the spring, her hand brushing the surface of the water. As she touched it, a vision unfolded before her eyes. She saw the world, vast and beautiful, but also fragile, its lands ravaged by storms, its rivers running dry, its forests burning. She saw the hearts of people, some filled with light, others consumed by darkness, but all connected by a thread of life. She saw the cycle of birth and death, growth and decay, and how, within that cycle, there was a constant ebb and flow, a push and pull that shaped the world. But most of all, she saw herself standing at the center of it all, not as a solitary being, but as part of the greater whole. She was a thread in the fabric of the universe, a part of the dance of life and death. The healing she had sought, the peace she had shared, was only a part of the greater process, one that was ever evolving, ever changing. And then, the vision shifted. She saw the spring, the source of life, reaching out to the world, sending its healing waters to every corner of the earth. The rivers, once dry, began to flow again. The forests, once barren, began to bloom. And in the hearts of all beings, from the smallest creature to the greatest king, she saw the awakening of a new understanding, a realization that they were all connected, bound together by the threads of life. The vision faded, and Alara was left kneeling by the sacred spring, her heart filled with a profound sense of peace. She understood now. The healing she had sought was not just for individuals, but for the world as a whole. The balance of life was fragile, but within that fragility lay its beauty. She rose to her feet, her resolve stronger than ever. There was still work to be done. The world had awoken, but it was not yet fully healed. And Alara, with the wisdom and knowledge she had gained, would continue to be its guide, its protector, and its healer. In the years that followed, Alara traveled far and wide, spreading the wisdom she had gained from the sacred spring in the eternal spring. She visited cities, villages, and remote lands, speaking to all who would listen about the interconnectedness of life. Her message was simple, yet profound. All things, people, animals, plants, and the earth itself were bound together in a single, infinite dance. She spoke of balance, of healing, and of the importance of living in harmony with the world. And slowly, the world began to change. People grew more aware of their impact on the earth, and many began to seek ways to live more sustainably, to care for the land, and to honor the cycles of nature. Alara continued her journey, visiting the sacred spring and the eternal spring whenever she needed guidance. Each time, the springs revealed new truths, new depths of understanding. And each time, Alara felt more connected to the world around her, more at peace with the dance of life. One day, as Alara sat by the sacred spring, watching the waters shimmer in the moonlight, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Her work was not done, but it had changed. No longer was it about fixing what was broken, it was about nurturing, guiding, and allowing the world to heal in its own time. She had become a part of the natural flow, no longer separate from the world, but one with it. And so, as the seasons passed and the world continued to grow and change, Alara's name became a legend not of a healer, but of a guide, a teacher, and a protector of life itself. Her spirit lived on, not just in the stories told by those who had known her, but in every leaf that fluttered in the wind, in every river that flowed to the sea, and in every heart that embraced the interconnectedness of all things. For Alara had become one with the world, and in doing so, had helped the world remember its own beauty, its own strength, and its own ability to heal. Years passed, and the world Alara had touched began to bloom in new ways. The healing of the land was not an overnight transformation, but a gradual unfolding, a gentle rebirth of the earth itself. Communities had come together to care for the forests, the rivers, and the skies. People began to embrace their roles as caretakers of the earth, rather than conquerors. They honored the cycles of nature, understanding that every action, no matter how small, had an impact. Alara had long since left the mortal realm, but her presence remained, woven into the very fabric of the world. Her teachings lived on, passed down from generation to generation, carried on the winds and written in the songs of the rivers. The world was forever changed because of her wisdom and the understanding she shared about the interconnectedness of all things. It was during one of the many gatherings she had inspired a meeting of people from villages far and wide that a child, no older than 7, stood up and spoke of a dream. "I dreamed of a woman," the child said, voice trembling yet filled with reverence. "She stood by the sacred spring, and her heart was full of light. She told me that the world is healing, that it will always heal, but only if we remember to be kind to one another and to the earth. She said we are all part of something much greater than ourselves." The crowd fell silent. There was no mistaking the description. The child spoke of Alara. The elders, who had known Alara and had listened to her stories, nodded solemnly. They had all felt her presence in the wind, in the rustling of the leaves, in the stillness of the night. Alara had never truly left. Her spirit remained with the land. Her wisdom continued to guide them. As the years passed into centuries, the legend of Alara grew, becoming more than just a tale told by firesides. It became the foundation of a new era, an era where the balance between nature and humanity was restored. Her teachings influenced artists, philosophers, and dreamers who saw the beauty in every corner of the earth. Her name became synonymous with compassion, healing, and wisdom, an eternal reminder that life was a circle, and that every end was but the beginning of something new. One day, when the land had fully healed and the earth was once again flourishing, a great event took place. The sacred spring, which had once seemed like a distant, ethereal memory, began to glow once more. But this time, it wasn't just a pool of water, it was a reflection of the entire earth, a mirror of all that had been restored. The waters shimmered with the life that had returned to the planet, the flourishing forests, the rivers full of clear water, the skies teeming with birds, and the hearts of the people who had embraced the balance of nature. And then, as if in response to the call of the earth, the eternal spring appeared once again, a vast, luminous fountain of pure, healing water, larger and brighter than it had ever been before. It flowed with a deep, gentle current, sending its healing waters across the land to all who sought its blessing. The eternal spring had returned, not just as a source of healing, but as a symbol of the harmony between all things. It was a reminder that when the world came together in unity, when people and nature stood side by side, the earth itself could heal, grow, and thrive. Centuries passed since the return of the eternal spring. The world had flourished, and the story of Alara had become a living tradition. As the earth thrived, there arose a new generation of guardians, individuals chosen to protect the sacred springs and the wisdom passed down from Alara herself. These guardians were not simply protectors of the land but also bearers of Alara's teachings. They traveled the world, spreading the message of balance, healing, and the interconnectedness of all life. They visited the villages, the forests, and the oceans, ensuring that the principles Alara had set forth remained a part of everyday life. At the heart of their journey was a new spring, one that had appeared in the most unexpected of Placessa valleys surrounded by towering mountains, where the land was untouched and wild. It was here, at the spring's edge, that a child named Lysandra was born. Lysandra was unlike any other child. From an early age, she showed a profound connection to the world around her. She could hear the whispers of the trees, understand the language of the winds, and feel the heartbeat of the earth beneath her feet. She was a child of the sacred springs, a living embodiment of Alara's legacy. One day, when Lysandra was old enough, she ventured into the forest surrounding the sacred valley. She had heard stories of the eternal spring and its healing waters, but there was something more calling deep within her heart. It was time for her to journey to the heart of the world, to stand before the waters of the eternal spring and learn the final lessons of Alara. Her path was guided by an unseen force, as if the earth itself was leading her toward the sacred grove. After days of travel, she arrived at the site of the eternal spring, where the waters gleamed with an almost ethereal glow. Standing at the edge of the spring, Lysandra felt the energy of the land pulse through her. The water rippled, and a vision unfolded before her eyes: Alara herself, her spirit timeless and eternal. Alara spoke to Lysandra, her voice like the wind through the trees. Child of the earth, you are the next keeper of the balance. Just as I have passed my wisdom to those before you, it is now your turn to carry the flame. But remember, this world does not belong to one, but to all. Your task is not to control the land, but to ensure that its cycles remain undisturbed. Lysandra knelt before the spring, her heart filled with both awe and a deep sense of purpose. Alara's teachings resonated within her, and she understood that her role as a guardian would be one of service, not power. The balance of life was delicate, and her duty was to protect it, to nurture it, and to teach others to do the same. As Lysandra left the sacred grove and returned to the valley, she carried with her a new understanding. She was no longer just a child of the earth, she was a bridge between the past and the future, the living embodiment of Alara's teachings. With her guidance, the guardians of the springs would continue their work, ensuring that the delicate balance between humanity and nature was never broken. Lysandra's arrival as the new guardian marked the beginning of a new age. The guardians, now spread across the world, came together to share their knowledge and wisdom. Their gatherings became sacred events, where people from all corners of the earth would come to hear the teachings passed down from Alara's time. In every village, every city, the teachings of Alara were upheld. People lived in harmony with the land, understanding that their actions had lasting consequences. They respected the sacred springs and the natural world, knowing that it was their duty to protect the earth for future generations. The eternal spring continued to shine as a beacon of hope, its waters flowing freely across the land, spreading healing and renewal. It was a symbol of the interconnectedness of all things, reminding the world that life was not a solitary journey but a shared one. The earth, with all its creatures, was a living, breathing entity, and humanity was an integral part of it. As time passed, the story of Alara became not just a tale of one individual but a collective story of the world's healing. Her name, once spoken in reverence, became a part of the daily life of those who understood the importance of balance, unity, and respect for the earth. And so, the world entered an age of unity, a time when the teachings of Alara were no longer just a guiding principle, but the foundation upon which the world stood. As the world embraced the teachings of Alara and the guardians continued their work, a new challenge began to emerge. Though the earth had healed, not all of humanity had fully embraced the delicate balance that had been restored. The harmony that had once been established was now being tested by the rise of those who sought to control rather than coexist with nature. In the farthest reaches of the known world, a group of individuals known as the Seekers began to stir. They were scholars, explorers, and dreamers, but they also sought power over the earth itself. The Seekers had uncovered forgotten texts from ancient times. Texts that spoke of hidden forces and energies within the land, forces that could be harnessed for their own benefit. Led by a man named Kalen, whose ambition knew no bounds. The Seekers believed that they could use the Earth's natural energies to manipulate the world to their will. They believed that by tapping into the sacred springs and the deep forces beneath the Earth, they could gain control of not only the land but the future itself. Kalen had been aware of Alara's teachings, and though he once respected them, his desire for control grew stronger. He saw the eternal spring and the sacred springs as keys to ultimate power, not as places of healing. But Lysandra, now the chief guardian, was not blind to the stirrings of this new threat. She could feel the disturbance in the land as Kalen and his seekers sought to bend the natural forces to their will. The earth itself seemed to tremble, as though it was warning them of the dangers ahead. Lysandra called a gathering of the guardians. They met at the sacred grove, where the eternal spring's waters shimmered as they had for centuries. The guardian keepers of Alara's wisdom knew that the time had come for them to stand against this new challenge. The teachings of Alara were not simply about balance and healing, they were also about understanding the limits of power and the respect owed to the earth. Kalen's desire to control the earth's forces is a path that leads only to destruction, Lysandra said, her voice calm but filled with urgency. We must stop him before the harmony we've worked so hard to maintain is lost. The guardians agreed. They knew that this battle would not be one of violence, but one of wisdom and understanding. The Seekers had power, but the Guardians held something far more valuable: the knowledge of the Earth's true nature and the deep wisdom passed down from Alara. As the Guardians set out to confront the Seekers, Lysandra knew that it wouldn't be an easy task. Kalen and his followers were clever and persuasive, and they believed that their understanding of the Earth's forces was the key to a brighter future. But Lysandra also knew that the world had learned long ago that the pursuit of power could never be separated from the respect for the land. Kalen and his seekers had found a remote cavern beneath a mountain, where the Earth's pulse was particularly strong. They believed that by tapping into the cavern's energy, they could unlock the ancient forces buried beneath the Earth, forces that had long since been left undisturbed. As they entered the cavern, Lysandra and the Guardians sensed the power of the land rising in the air. The stone walls of the cavern seemed to hum with energy, and the very ground beneath their feet felt alive with an intensity they had never experienced before. But they also felt a deep dissonance. Kalen and his followers were disrupting the natural flow of the earth, channeling its power in ways that were not meant to be. Lysandra stepped forward, her heart heavy but resolute. Kalen, she called out, her voice echoing through the cavern. This power does not belong to you. It belongs to all of us, shared, not controlled. Kalen, standing at the center of a circle of glowing crystals, turned to face her. You misunderstand, Lysandra. I do not seek to harm the earth, I seek to free it. To give humanity the power to shape the future. But you cannot force the land to bend to your will, Lysandra replied. You are not free if you have taken away the land's freedom. The earth's power cannot be contained, controlled, or hoarded. It is a gift, not a tool. Kalen sneered. You speak of balance, of harmony. But look at the world. Even with all your so-called wisdom, there is still suffering, there is still conflict. I seek to end that suffering by bending the world to our will. Lysandra stepped closer, her feet firmly planted on the ground. You cannot heal the world by imposing your own will on it. You can only heal it by understanding that we are all part of something greater, that we must live in harmony with the earth. Not as its rulers, but as its caretakers. A tense silence followed. The seekers, who had gathered around Kaylin, seemed torn. Some looked uncertain, while others remained steadfast in their belief that Kaylin's vision was the right path. Then, the earth spoke not through words, but through the energy that surged around them. The cavern's walls began to shake, and the crystals, once glowing with power, flickered and dimmed. It was as if the land itself was rejecting the force being thrust upon it. Lysandra closed her eyes, her mind reaching out to the land. She spoke softly, her words a prayer to the earth itself. We are not separate from you. We are part of you. Heal us, and show us the path. The ground beneath them hummed, a low, resonant sound that echoed through the cavern. The energy in the air shifted, and Kaylin's hold over the earth's power began to waver. The cavern's energy, once surging with intensity, now flowed freely, its balance restored. Kaylin, realizing that he could not fight the earth itself, fell to his knees. The cavern was no longer a source of power to control, it was a living, breathing part of the world, and it would not be manipulated. The seekers who had followed him stood in stunned silence, their eyes wide with the realization that the power they sought could never be theirs to own. Lysandra approached Kaylin, her voice gentle yet firm. The earth does not belong to any one person. It belongs to all of us. The moment you sought to control it, you set yourself apart from the world you claimed to protect. Kaylin lowered his head, humbled by the truth. I thought I could make the world better by controlling it. But now I see that I was wrong. Lysandra nodded. It is not too late to change. The path of harmony, of respect, is always open to those willing to walk it. With Kaylin and his followers now understanding the truth of Alara's teachings, they were welcomed into the fold of the Guardians, where they would learn to live in unity with the land and share their newfound wisdom with others. And so, the earth was once again balanced, its energies flowing freely. Its sacred springs protected, and its guardians strengthened by the challenges they had overcome. As the seekers were reconciled and the guardians worked together to restore harmony, a new presence began to stir beneath the earth, hidden and long forgotten. In the deepest corners of the world, far from the human settlements and the sacred springs, ancient beings known as the Forgotten Ones began to awaken. The Forgotten Ones were not creatures of malice, but beings of raw, untapped energy, guardians of the primal forces of the earth. They had slumbered for millennia, their existence tied to the deepest forces of the land, beyond the reach of even the most powerful of the sacred springs. Lysandra sensed the shift in the earth's energy. There was a deep, undisturbed power rising, as if the very core of the world was awakening. It was not a disturbance, but a natural reawakening of ancient forces that had long been dormant. As the balance of the world was restored, these forces began to stir once again, eager to reconnect with the living world above. One evening, under a sky painted with the colors of twilight, Lysandra gathered the guardians. The land itself seemed to hum with anticipation. It was as if the world itself had sensed the arrival of something new. Something is stirring beneath us, Lysandra said, her voice filled with a quiet urgency. The forgotten forces of the earth, ancient and powerful, are awakening. I feel their presence beneath the mountains, deep within the seas, and even within the winds themselves. The guardians exchanged glances, understanding the weight of her words. They had known of the Forgotten Ones from the ancient texts of Alara. But they had been thought to be legends, beings of such primordial power that they were believed to be lost to time. Should we seek them out? One of the guardians asked. We must, Lysandra replied. But we must tread carefully. The Forgotten Ones are not like us. They are not bound by the same principles of balance. They exist beyond the laws of nature we understand. Their reawakening could be both a blessing and a challenge. With determination, the guardians set out on a journey to the deep places of the earth, the mountains where the roots of the world dug deep into the soil, the caverns where the rivers of ancient energy flowed, and the seas where the heart of the earth pulsed in silence. Their journey took them through vast forests and desolate plains, across mountain ranges and through endless caverns, until they finally arrived at a place known only in myth, the heart of the earth. Here, deep beneath the surface, the Forgotten Ones had lain in slumber for eons, untouched by the changes above. The heart of the earth was a cavern unlike any other, with walls that shimmered with iridescent light, glowing with the ancient energy of the land. The air was thick with power, the very atmosphere vibrating with the pulse of the earth itself. As they ventured deeper into the cavern, they felt the energy intensify. At the center of the cavern, a massive stone altar stood. It was carved with intricate symbols, each one representing a different primal force: the winds, the waters, the earth, and the fire. These symbols radiated with energy, as if they were alive, watching the guardians approach. And then, they heard a voice, not spoken aloud but felt in the depths of their souls. It was an ancient voice, deep and resonant, as if the earth itself was speaking. Who dares to awaken the Forgotten Ones? Lysandra stepped forward, her heart steady. We are the guardians of the earth, protectors of the balance that has been restored. We seek to understand the forces you embody, to learn from you and share in the wisdom of the land. The voice echoed again, this time with a ripple of amusement. You believe the balance is whole, do you? You believe that the land has been healed? Then you must learn what lies beyond the balance, the forces that give shape to existence itself. From the shadows of the cavern, figures began to emerge. These beings were unlike any the guardians had seen. Their forms were fluid and shifting, as if they were made of the very elements themselves: winds that twisted like living serpents, waters that flowed in endless patterns, flames that flickered like the heartbeat of the earth, and stones that seemed to pulse with a deep, steady rhythm. We are the Forgotten Ones, the voice continued, and we have watched as the world has healed. But we are not here to be your guides, your teachers. We are here to remind you of the primal truth that lies beyond your balance. We are the forces that shape the world when it is born, and we are the forces that will unmake it when it falls. Lysandra stood tall, feeling the weight of their words. She had always known that balance was not a static thing, it was a living, breathing force that constantly shifted and evolved. But what the Forgotten Ones were speaking of was a deeper truth: that creation and destruction were two sides of the same coin, and that one could not exist without the other. You seek harmony, one of the beings of fire said, its form crackling with energy. But true harmony is not the absence of destruction, it is the acceptance of it, the understanding that creation and destruction are entwined. You have healed the world, but you must be prepared for the next cycle, for the world will always change, always evolve, and sometimes, it will burn. Lysandra felt a deep stir within her, a sense of understanding that transcended words. She had known that healing was a process, a constant ebb and flow of energies. But now, she realized that the cycle of life was much larger than she had imagined: a vast, unending process of creation, destruction, and rebirth. The balance you seek, the voice continued, is not the final answer. It is merely a stage in the endless dance of life. You must learn to walk that dance, to understand that both light and shadow are necessary for growth. Lysandra nodded, feeling the truth of their words settle within her. "Then we will learn from you," she said. "We will learn to walk with both the light and the dark, to understand that we must honor both creation and destruction, to ensure that the cycle continues." With the Forgotten One's teachings, the Guardians returned to the surface, carrying with them a new understanding of the earth. They were no longer just protectors of balance, they were now students of the deeper forces that shaped the world itself. Lysandra, now more than just a guardian, became a teacher in her own right. She shared the wisdom of the Forgotten Ones with the people of the world, helping them understand that the Earth's cycles were not to be feared, but embraced. The eternal spring continued to flow, its waters a symbol of healing. But now, it was accompanied by a new understanding that healing was not always a gentle process. Sometimes, it required the fire of transformation, the winds of change, and the deep, resonant pull of the Earth's pulse. And so, the world entered a new era, one of deeper understanding, where the balance between creation and destruction, light and dark, was honored. The cycle continued, ever flowing, ever renewing, as the Guardians, guided by the wisdom of both Alara and the Forgotten Ones, ensured that the Earth would remain in harmony, no matter what challenges arose. Today's story ends here. See you later.